our distinguished guest, John Lennox, came, and we will get started. I'm Primož Repar, let's say private researcher of Søren Kierkegaard and translator of his works, and also the director of the new institute we just established, Central European Research Institute Søren Kierkegaard Ljubljana, and I will moderate the discussion under the title, Does Modern Silence Lead to God? Firstly, I would like to introduce the participants of this discussion. So, John Lennox is professor of mathematics in the University of Oxford, fellow in mathematics and the philosophy of science, and pastoral advisor at Green Templation College in Oxford. He is also an adjunct lecturer at Wycliffe Hall, Oxford University, and the Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics, and is a senior fellow of the Trinity Forum. In addition, he teaches for the Oxford Strategic Leadership Program at the Exclusive Education Center, say Business School, Oxford University. He worked for many years in the Mathematics Institute at the University of Wales in Cardiff. He was Senior Alexander von Humboldt Fellow at the University of Würzburg and Freiburg in Germany. He has lectured also a lot in North America, Eastern Western Europe, and Australia, Asia, on mathematics, philosophy of science, and interface between science, philosophy, and theology. On my right side is Andrej Ule, professor of analytical philosophy and theory of science in the Department of Philosophy, Faculty of Arts, and of Philosophy of Science in the Faculty of Mathematics and Physics, University of Ljubljana. His doctoral thesis was Basic Philosophical Problems at the Modern Logic, Frege, Russell, and Wittgenstein. During the 80s, he got for 5 years the Humboldt Scholarship in Munich, where he studied the structural theory of science and the philosophy of Ludwig Wittgenstein. His main fields of research are logic, theory of philosophy of science, theory of knowledge, philosophy of language, and comparative philosophy. Next to Professor John Lennox is sitting Igor Emri. He's a chair professor of mechanics at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Ljubljana, and president of the Institute of Sustainable Innovative Technologies. He has developed an innovative theoretical experimental approach known as Knaus-Emri model to study the non-linear behavior of time-dependent materials. His current research activities are focused on non-linear time-dependent behavior of dispositive systems, with the emphasis on behavior of solid polymers and their nano, micro, and macro composites. He's one of the founders of and editor-in-chief at the International Journal Mechanics of Time-Dependent Materials, published by Springer Publishing House. He's member of many academies and societies of science abroad, and for example, Society of Experimental Mechanics in the United States, Russian Family of Engineering, and so on and so on. Next to him is Andrej Ule. He's writer, poet, philosopher, a geologist, physics, and an international renowned inventor currently employed at the Josef Stefan Institute. He is the author of the most advanced electric motors for robots and new generation electric vehicles. As an innovator, he aims to find more ecological methods for energy production. Furthermore, he has long been active in the new scientific field of synthropy. With his holistic worldview, he seeks for links between science and personal spiritual experience. And the last one is Marko Uršič, professor of logic and philosophy of nature in the Department of Philosophy, Faculty of Arts, University of Ljubljana. After graduating in philosophy and psychology, he worked in several professions, among them as a journalist and as a book editor. He has devoted himself to Aristotle's modal logic for his master's and was awarded his PhD for his thesis on implication and deductive necessity in the University of Ljubljana. His postdoc specialization in Salzburg with Professor Poleg was on logic of relevance. Professor Uršič understands his profession as love of wisdom. Main disciplines of philosophy he has been working in are logic, philosophy of nature, space and time, cosmology, metaphysics, philosophy of religion. He has written also some fiction books, philosophical prose. Our round table should be a relaxed discussion about the alternatives to reductionistic materialism, alternatives as would not give legitimacy to the pseudo-scientific standpoints or to relativization of science thought. We need alternatives, so do we need and why? Under the title, Does Modern Scientist Lead to God? I also saw the possibility of, let's say, some existential dimension regarding to Kierkegaard, I should say, because we just finished in the June big symposium, which is also connected in the way science and religion, because there we have, let's say, polemic state between Hegel and Kierkegaard, between the opposition, between the possibility and actuality, which could establish real science in existentialist sense, new ethics, like first philosophy. So maybe here we need also existential turning, existential practice of religion. Firstly, we would like to discuss whether contemporary science does indeed support only hard reductionistic, materialistic views of reality, and on the other hand, what sort of inherent safety laws does the scientific community have or ought to have against sliding into slant of anything goes, which somebody could exploit also in the political sphere. So, what is there instead of hard secularism? What sort of soft secularism should there be? We will first begin with somehow theoretical way. I wanted to explore Kierkegaard because I think his borders are probably artificial, especially from the part of religion. between theory and praxis. Because relationally, the kind in which your life or total existence might be put at risk marks the conceptual connection between subjectivity and truth in the history of modern philosophy. So, in the main, they are a phenomenological description, epistemological explanation intending to communicate the how existing instead of what. In accomplishing that end, we should direct attention to the passional domain of human existence, integrating it with two other domains, thought and the lived world of events or citizenship. The task of being generally human is to relate the passional, that includes dispositions, hopes and wishes, to the domains of thought and causality, or to form a unity. A life of faith or religion in many dimensions, determined by a doubly dialectical paradox, heightens the passion of commitment and moves one to the very limits of human existence. So we need actualized individual, which paradoxically transforming one's own existence by faith. Here you understand as communication existence, not as a lack of thought or move in dialectical logic, with this difference between possibility and actuality and thought. So the first part of discussion will be devoted more to the theoretical aspect, science-religion relationship, the question of the compatibility or non-compatibility of religion and science, with the limits we just told, and the second part to the practical aspects, the implications of this relationship for society. So religion as a tool against the also, I say this society dimension, monster illusions. But let me at the first level of discussion, let me clear out theoretical aspect. Is something like this exists? So the real question is whether the presuppositions, convictions and different insights which some could call religion, others spirituality or faith or contemplation are compatible or not with science. But we talked rather about the compatibility of these convictions, insights with the same persons. So I have the first question, and I would ask firstly Professor Lennox. So what is the situation with this relationship? Are gods and science perpetual opponents, or are they not compatible at all? Or if go a bit further, does God have some sort of role in contemporary science, or is he just a hypothesis which we don't need?